Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Kimon Hatza and I'm a business attorney at GrowthCounsel in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I focus by practice exclusively on business transactions across industries, but with an emphasis on technology and life sciences companies. Tonight, we're continuing our series on technology and life sciences leaders. Before we get started, I want to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues related to life sciences or technology matters or companies will be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the show is pre-recorded and shown at a later time, the information may no longer be current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm happy to have as my co-host this evening, Charlie Huntington. Charlie is the head of public relations for Life Sciences PA, the voice of advancement for the life sciences in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Charlie, thank you for co-hosting.
Pleasure, Kimon. Thank you.
Charlie, fingers crossed the pandemic is winding down. I don't want to speak too soon and jinx us all, but Life Sciences PA is always a thought leader on issues, and I was wondering how have they, with all the programming that they have, how have they dealt with the pandemic?
Kimon, thanks for the question. I think they've dealt with the pandemic very well. Chris Molyneux and his team recently pulled off a great program over, basically it lasted a week when you include the partnering sessions. This was the biofarm part of Life Sciences Future, as they call it. And one day was in-person networking where if you were vaccinated, you had the opportunity to join. It was 250 people. They capped it. They had us all show our vaccination cards on the front end, and it went off without a hitch. And there were leaders there, both from government as well as from the cell and gene therapy areas. And I think everyone had a great time. The following days were spent virtually, and it was a way that they could really get talent from around the world to come and to present to the biofarm audience in Greater Philadelphia. They have an event that will be coming up in December, which is going to be their holiday mixer, and the jury's still out as to how many people will be able to attend that event. My assumption is going to be that mixer will be in person, but we just got to see where COVID is at that point.
I know you and I have in years past attended the Day on the Hill in Washington, D.C. I understand, I think you told me previously that those have been remote or whatever maybe the last year or two. I was wondering if there's been any discussion about whether that's going to be in person next spring, I guess.
Yeah, so those happen at the state level and at the federal level in April and May, and the jury's still out. As you might guess, we're sort of divided in Congress on masks or no masks. So your guess is as good as mine as to who we'll be able to see and when we're going to be able to see them, Kimon.
Right. Well, we have a terrific guest this evening, and I want to bring her out here. Before I do, I just want to remind our viewers that if you have a question that you would like us to answer on a future show, watch this video to see how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce our special guest this evening, Stefanie Lattner. Stefanie is the founder and CEO of WeVibin, a company with a breakthrough technology that improves cognitive performance for adults with attention deficit. She began her career as a project manager in the Department of Radiology at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Thereafter, she held positions of increasing responsibility, first as a senior manager of research and development at Philips Respironics, before transitioning to the business side as the executive in residence at Innovationworks. She subsequently held the position of VP Strategy for XL Tech Group, and thereafter as VP Operations for its subsidiary, Parabel. Prior to founding WeVibin, she was the CEO of Polis Corporation, a biomedical research company that investigates neurostimulation techniques to treat specific neurological functions. Stefanie earned a BA in electrical engineering and an MS in bioengineering from the University of Pittsburgh, and subsequently earned her MBA at the University of Michigan. Stefanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Stefanie, what first attracted you to a career in the life sciences, in particular in the med tech space?
Yeah, probably two formative things that happened when I was growing up. First, I saw an engineer on TV help a man with a spinal cord injury stand and take a few steps using electrical stimulation. It was really wild. And then unfortunately, I had a family member with a severe brain illness, and to be honest with you, just felt totally helpless. So I knew I wanted to be a bioengineer and study the brain and nerve functioning. And I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh to get my undergrad in electrical engineering and then a master's in bioengineering. And the professors there really had a huge impact on me. In fact, one of them actually had a spinal cord injury. And one of the biggest lessons that he taught us was to not try to necessarily turn back the clock on the physical impairment, because that might not be possible, but rather focus on ways to enable the person's independence and preserve their dignity. And that really has come full circle now with the company that I'm currently running.
Mm-hmm. You've had some wonderful experience, the University of Pittsburgh, Philips Respironics, Innovationworks, and Polis. Tell us how that helped prepare you to become the founder and CEO of WeVibin.
Yeah, well, certainly working for University of Pittsburgh, UPMC, was the foundation for me academically. I started studying feedback loops in the brain way back then from the perspective of control theory, and also was trained in the functioning of the vestibular system, which is core to our current work. In that kind of a role, you learn how to digest just huge volumes of research, analyze data and statistics, conduct studies, but we also worked with industry to implement the first teleradiology system, I think, in the world. And there was a lot of software development in that effort. Then working for Respironics was just a totally different experience. Of course, they're the leader in sleep medicine and respiratory care. They're now Philips Medical. And really what that taught me was the rigor and discipline that's required to make end products that the general population use. I was also given the opportunity to lead a multidisciplinary group of people that were focused on products that had never been invented in the world, and we didn't know if there was a market. So our job was literally to generate the ideas, figure out if there's a business case to be had, create the early devices and get them through preclinical and clinical, and then assess the manufacturability. And I think once you're exposed to that entrepreneurial vibe, it was a logical next step for me to work with Innovationworks, who, as you know, is one of the Ben Franklin technology partners. And serving as an executive in residence there, I had a portfolio of companies that I was responsible to work with, and that included robotics, med tech, and life sciences. And not only did I get to work with all of those management teams, but I got to serve on the board as a board observer, and that is really a rare experience. So each of these really were instrumental in preparing for me for what I'm doing today.
That's great. What would you say is the most challenging aspect of your role as CEO of the company?
Yeah, well, this could change probably on any given day, but I would say that just juggling all of the various responsibilities for the different functional areas of the company. When you have a small team, you don't have full-fledged teams in each of those areas. Just keeping all the balls in the air and keeping everything moving in the right direction is probably just the most challenging.
Was there any aspect of your job, whether good, bad, or neutral, that was a complete surprise to you after you founded the company and started acting as its CEO?
I wouldn't say totally surprised because I've had a pretty natural progression to this, but sometimes it's a little startling to hear how many people that maybe don't have your background, have never been in a startup, have never done what you're trying to do, feel really confident in telling you what they think of you or your company. So it's caused me to just implement a good filter where if their advice is helping me move the company forward, obviously I heed the advice, but oftentimes just I have to let some of that stuff roll off my back.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Stefanie, why is WeVibin in this business?
Yeah, well, WeVibin is in the business for a few reasons. First, people used to think that ADD was something that happened to kids and then you grew out of it. We now know that not only is that not the case, there's even more people that are struggling as adults, whether that be for whatever reason they weren't diagnosed as kids, or technology addiction, or just our hectic lifestyles. And with that comes poor attention, frustration, and increased anxiety. There's some serious consequences too. Researchers estimate that people with ADD have way more substance abuse. There's impaired emotional control, severe car accidents, 3 times more likely to die by the age of 45. There's professional and personal relationship difficulty, frequent job loss, and suicide rates in this population is very high. Now, if you juxtapose that with the fact that the lion's share of adults actively choose not to take medication, instead they're taking healthcare into their own hands, and that usually means coffee and alcohol. And while we want people to take healthcare into their own hands, we want them to have the right tools and the right therapies that are clinically validated so that they can take control of their life, not necessarily feel broken or like someone's trying to fix them, and just get the care that they needed. We also want to be able to provide them to healthcare providers if they need that.
Thank you. What are the company's main areas of focus?
Our main area of focus is attention deficit for sure. And then we also plan to investigate autism and PTSD.
Okay. And does the company have any proprietary intellectual property?
Yep, we sure do. We have filed all of our patents internationally, and they have all issued. And we have several other patents in the pipeline, as long as trademarks.
So what stage of development is this, the company's technology at this point?
Yeah, well, thankfully, we just launched our app, so it's available on the App Store and the Google Play Store, and we are prepping for manufacturing of the therapy device now and plan to launch shortly after that.
So should we expect people to be able to get this from their doctors near term?
We actually conducted several surveys and asked this very question: do you expect to get this from your doctor? And the overwhelming response was no, they just want to order it online. So we plan to sell direct to consumer. And I think this is probably just a true reflection of how we live our lives and what the customer expectations are now.
So how do you know that this is safe and effective?
Yeah, we conducted several internal studies to determine the details of our neuromodulation technique, not only what works, but what doesn't work, so that we knew that we weren't dealing with a placebo effect. We also did EEG studies, cerebral blood flow, and other cognitive performance tests. We took that data to a national IRB and refined a protocol for an independent study. And they also looked at our safety profile and introduced us to a physician group that had both psychiatrists and neurologists that were equipped to do this study. And this ended up being a really great group to work with, because not only did they treat patients medically as their daily practice, but they had a research arm that also conducted all of the pharmaceutical trials for ADHD, as well as stimulation devices for depression and other neuropsych indications. So that turned out great for us, and thankfully the data came out excellent as well.
So do you anticipate other uses for your technology? And if so, would you share those with us, please?
Yeah, because there's some overlap with sensory processing, we plan to investigate autism and PTSD.
Great.
Um, Stephanie, what are the biggest issues that we hear from entrepreneurs who have started their own companies is around the financing and growing of those companies? A lot of people find that to be a really a terrific headache, and because they tend to be into the science that they're developing, it's a necessary evil, I guess, a necessary distraction and focus for entrepreneurs. What is your plan for financing and growing the company? Do you want to do it organically? Do you plan to partner with a larger company with a similar product line, or what have you been thinking?
Yeah, we do plan to grow the company directly through direct to consumer sales, and we do foresee some partnerships with psychiatric offices and psychology, therapy practices. As opportunities arise, obviously, if they propel us in the right direction, would entertain that. And then for financing, we do plan to do a capital raise in the near future.
Okay. Are there competitive products currently in this space in your industry, or is your product unique and unchallenged at this point?
Yeah, well, fortunately, just growing up in this industry, I've studied every type of stimulation, electrical, magnetic, caloric, you name it. So we intentionally designed this to use vibration because for two reasons. One, it falls into a much safer category from a safety perspective, and it also has a much more pleasant sensation for the user. So there's a lion's share of work, research, and one company that I know of that are pursuing electrical stimulation. We actually tested that in the past and decided that was not the right route for us. Whenever you have products that are made with electrical or magnetic stimulation, you're delivering power to the head, so that puts you in a totally different safety category.
And people that have these conditions now, like attention deficit disorder, are they currently mostly treated with medicines? Is that how they are treated?
Yeah, so the primary treatments are medication, therapy, and neurofeedback. So the medications most people are aware of. The therapy is really for family relationships and behavioral changes. And the neurofeedback is a technique where you're wearing an EEG cap and trying to train your brain into paying more attention.
Um, what would you say are the biggest barriers to entry into your industry or industries of focus?
Yeah, I think anytime you're doing something new, the barriers to entry are always the status quo. So, if you're in a university, you may think you're the only group that's making inventions when in fact industry has a ton of inventions that people don't know of. And if you're a doctor and you've got a slew of patients coming through the door, you might have the perception that everybody prefers a medication because you're not exposed to the lion's share of the population that actually doesn't want to be on medication. So similarly, we have a device that is going to be new. We're actually not trying to change behavior or change the current infrastructure. We just happen to have a population that they're aware of what's out there and has chosen not to pursue that route. So that's really our target audience.
And what would success look like for WeVibin?
Yeah. So success for us, we really want to have a noticeable impact on our part of the mental health space. Every week, people, I don't know, reach out to me and find me and they tell me their story and what's going on in their life. And it always includes a very personal need and what hasn't worked. It's a very thing that tells me that we're on the right track. And no matter what the roadblocks or competitions out there, that we're doing the right thing. So we want to be that company that people feel comfortable coming to, telling us what they're trying, giving them the tools where they can test to see what's working for them and what's not. We also know that our device is going to give a huge amount of people benefit. And we also want to be the conduit for people that do need medical care, we want them to get access to the medical care. And sometimes coming in through an indirect way actually facilitates that.
Stephanie, just one additional thing. I'm going to ask you another question, and I'm cutting in front of Charlie. I'm sorry, Charlie. This sounds like a labor of love for you. I mean, it sounds like something that started at a very early age for you. Is this the type of thing where if this company is successful and you're able to build it the way you want to build it and help people the way you hope to help people, is this something that you would continue to do, just continue to run your company? I mean, we have two kinds of people basically that we see on the show typically. Some are just that, what I described, and others are serial entrepreneurs that, they find an idea, they build a business, they sell it, and then they move on to the next thing. Where does WeVibin fit for you?
Yeah, I think the latter would be our approach. I've been around the business long enough to know that the engine keeps cycling and new ideas keep coming. And so to grow this to a respectable level and have it acquired would be a dream, and then move on to the next idea. So I've just lived in the world of lots of technologies, lots of ideas, lots of inventions. And obviously the more successful you are, then that has a rippling effect for other types of companies. So that would be the route for us.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, you've experienced working in the life sciences and the med tech space in both Pennsylvania and Florida. How do those two markets compare, as well as how would you compare them to other life science and med device hubs around the country in terms of starting and growing a med tech company?
Yeah, for sure. PA has a longer history and acceptance of med tech companies and life sciences companies. There's a way more mature entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I personally believe it's because the Ben Franklin Technology Partners were put in like 40 years ago, and all of the other complementary organizations that have grown around that as well. But Pennsylvania is also still fairly traditional in their approach, and like all states except for like maybe 5, sometimes struggle to get the larger venture capital in. Florida's entrepreneurial ecosystem is not mature at all, but the state is very aggressive in wooing large investors here, and they're really good at promoting the state and the business advantages of being here, and also the benefits to the companies and the people that work in the companies. So that draws a ton of attention. Unfortunately, there's great medical schools here and great engineering schools. I haven't really seen that translate into med tech or life sciences companies popping up through the ecosystem, and that could certainly be just my lack of visibility into it. So, who knows if that will get better.
You've mentioned Ben Franklin Technology Partners a couple times, and I just want to say for our viewers, many of whom will be familiar with this, Ben Franklin, just to refresh our viewers' memories, is an organization that really grew out of the tobacco settlement money many, many years ago. And they have operations in Philadelphia and in central Pennsylvania, in the Lehigh Valley, as well as out in the Pittsburgh area. That's what Stephanie's referring to. They'll put money from time to time into these companies and help incubate them, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Charlie, many of the companies that have come through Ben Franklin, we've hosted CEOs and entrepreneurs on the show. So
it's a great validator, isn't that what we've seen? People use Ben Franklin and their funding, which could be, we've seen it, be up to $250,000 in some cases, maybe higher than that, Kimon. But it serves as a great validator where we've seen other funding sources then want to get in Ben Franklin's jet stream, for lack of a better word picture. So.
Okay. Hey, Stephanie, even though your business is based in Florida, you still have some connections to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, probably in particular. Why is that?
Yeah, for a few reasons. One, I grew up in PA and know the style of the working style. I personally appreciate the hard work ethic and people take great pride in being trained properly for the work that they're taking on. We're a virtual company, so we could pick expertise anywhere we needed it. And for me, I needed great IP counsel. I needed great corporate counsel. I get bioengineering support, ADHD educators, QA and manufacturing folks, and clinical support all come out of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing these days about working virtually, because you can draw that talent from anywhere, wherever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's a real advantage for businesses instead of having people to have to be in a particular location exclusively.
Yeah, absolutely, for a startup.
Yeah. What there are a lot of people out there that have been working with technologies. I'll use the pharmaceutical industry as an example. There are a number of folks who have been working with a particular compound, trying to develop a drug, and the large pharmaceutical company decides, it's not going to be it's a great drug, but it's not going to be a big money maker for us. So they shelve that idea. And so those people say, you know what, I want to develop this. So they leave and they license the technology, and they develop their own company. What advice do you have for folks who previously haven't been entrepreneurs, but now are deciding to, start a company around technology with which they are familiar?
Yeah. So in addition to that example you gave, there's probably a similar one, somebody coming out of the university that feels the same way, or even somebody that's gone to school for entrepreneurship or engineering and they got the bug to start their company. And for all of them, I would recommend pretty much the same thing: is take your skills, if possible, go work for a startup for a year or two before you start your own company. I know not many people say that, but that's just been my personal experience. It's my opinion that all of these pitch competitions and startup shows have done a real disservice to entrepreneurs and to investors, because they've made everything look like a game show. And I don't think the expectations are set properly. And if you've never worked in a startup, you're probably going to be very ill prepared for just the pace, the amount of responsibility, the no excuse environment, the fact that there's no one to deflect or defer to. So it's just a whole different beast. And having that experience in a startup, I think, would cause you to propel you when you go and do your own thing.
Well, that's great. And that's perfect timing, because I think we've come to the end. Great. Thanks for you, Stefanie, for being on the show. You're a terrific guest, and we hope we can have you back again sometime. Charlie,
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Charlie, thank you for co-hosting. Terrific as always. The next guest on Money Matters TV is Len Goetz, who's a CPA from Pasco Financial. That's all the time we have. See you again next time. Take care.